I've always believed love is shown through action, not performance. I'm not the guy posting filtered couple photos or buying $1,000 purses just for social media clout. I'm the one who helps you move a couch in the pouring rain, who remembers your coffee order without asking, and who sits with you in a hospital waiting room at 3 in the morning. For 2.5 years, I thought that was what mattered. Jessica proved me wrong. It all came crashing down one Tuesday night in a loud downtown Austin restaurant. But the cracks had been forming for months. Before I tell you the exact words that severed our history, you need to understand the depth of my investment. It wasn't just time, it was pieces of myself. When Jessica and I first met, she was a whirlwind of ambition and anxiety, finishing her master's degree in marketing at the University of Texas at Austin, while working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet in a city that was getting more expensive by the day. She was brilliant, funny, and driven, a fire I couldn't look away from. I was already established in my career as a software engineer, enjoying the stability that came with it. I saw her stress, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she'd flinch when her banking app sent a low balance notification. So I stepped in. I never kept a ledger, but the memories are burned into me like receipts. There was the time her ancient sedan finally gave up the ghost on the Mopac Expressway. She was hysterical, stranded, and late for a waitressing shift. I left my own work meeting, drove out to get her, dealt with the tow truck, and for the next 3 weeks, I was her personal chauffeur. I'd get up an hour early to drive her to her morning internship, then pick her up in the afternoon to take her to the restaurant, getting home myself long after sunset. When she finally saved enough for a down payment on a new car, I didn't mention the extra hours I'd worked to make sure our own bills were covered while I was burning through gasoline for her. Then there was the winter she came down with a brutal case of pneumonia, missing nearly 3 full weeks of work. She had no sick pay, and the panic in her voice over rent was raw and real. I told her not to worry, that we'd figure it out. What she didn't know was that I figured it out by taking on a freelance coding project that had me working until 2 in the morning every night for a month. I paid her share of the rent, and when she asked, I just said I'd gotten a surprise bonus at work. I didn't want her to feel indebted. I wanted her to feel secure. I thought that was love. I thought carrying someone's weight when they were struggling was the entire point of a partnership. Jessica wasn't a monster. In the quiet moments, just the 2 of us watching a movie on the couch or walking through Zilker Park, she could be incredibly warm and affectionate. She'd lean her head on my shoulder and tell me I was her rock. As graduation approached, she started running with a wealthier, more image-obsessed crowd, and her comments began to carry a subtle, toxic sting. We'd be discussing a vacation, and I'd suggest a cozy, affordable cabin retreat in the hill country. She'd sigh, scrolling through her phone. "Look at this," she'd say, showing me an influencer's post from a 5-star resort in Cabo. "Don't you ever want something glamorous, Jake? Not everything has to be about being practical." Another time, for our anniversary, I spent weeks tracking down a signed, first edition copy of her favorite novel. She gave me a thin-lipped thank you, then spent the evening gushing about Madison's new David Yurman bracelet. The book I'd found was left on the coffee table, while the bracelet was a recurring topic of conversation for days. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself she was just stressed, that she was comparing our reality to the curated fantasies she saw online. I loved her, and I believed in the foundation we had built. But a small, cold seed of doubt had been planted in my mind. Was I just a placeholder until something shinier came along? The night it all ended began with a text from her. "Dinner with Chloe and Madison tonight at Vesper, 8 o'clock. Wear that nice blue shirt." Vesper was one of those new, trendy restaurants where the cocktails cost $22, and the main courses were artistic swirls of sauce on an otherwise empty plate. It was loud, dimly lit, and designed for Instagram. I was exhausted after a grueling day of debugging a critical software patch, but Jessica was excited to show off a new dress and catch up with her friends, so I agreed. I arrived to find them already 3 cocktails in, their laughter sharp and loud over the thumping bass of the background music. Jessica looked beautiful, I couldn't deny it. She was radiant and full of life, thriving on the room's energy. I felt like a spectator at my own table, sipping my water while they ordered another round of spicy palomas and gossiped about people I'd never met. As the night wore on, fueled by expensive tequila, the conversation drifted to past relationships and dating horror stories. Madison was recounting a tale about a guy who'd tried to pay for a date with an expired Groupon. They all shrieked with laughter. Then Chloe, her eyes glinting with a mischievous sort of cruelty, turned to Jessica. "So, Jess," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "What's it like being with the same guy for so long? Don't you ever feel like you settled down too early? That you're missing out on all the fun?" I felt a subtle tension shift at the table. It was a loaded question, and I braced myself for Jessica to defend us, to say something about stability or genuine connection. She let the glass hover near her lips, her eyes glinting with a casual disregard. "To be honest," she began with a smirk, uttering the words that would brand themselves into my memory. "Dating him is like settling for leftovers." The air went out of the room. I think for a split second, I genuinely believed I had misheard her through the din of the restaurant. Chloe's smile faltered. Madison let out a choked, nervous laugh, clearly unsure if it was a joke. But Jessica, emboldened by the alcohol and the audience, doubled down. She shrugged her shoulders with a careless flick. "I mean, don't get me wrong, he's reliable and all. He's comfortable. He's not the champagne you toast with, you know? More like the house wine. But hey," she shrugged with a playful grin, "it still gets the job done, right?" She said it casually, and in that single, crushing moment, everything shifted. The background noise of the restaurant faded into a dull, roaring static in my ears. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, their feigned amusement evaporating into awkward discomfort. Madison quickly tried to change the subject to a recent celebrity breakup, but the damage was done. The words hung in the air above our half-eaten, overpriced appetizers, settling for leftovers. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing the wound she'd just inflicted. I simply sat there, a ghost at the table, letting her casual cruelty sink in and solidify into a cold, hard resolve. I watched her laugh, indifferent to the fact she had just detonated everything between us. When the waiter finally brought the check, I didn't hesitate. I reached into my wallet, pulled out my credit card, and placed it on top of the bill before anyone else could move. It came to $472, a staggering sum for a few bites and a lot of insults. I covered all of it. Her dress-worthy dinner, her friends' multiple cocktails, everything. It felt like a final, symbolic payment for services rendered. Then I pushed my chair back and stood up. Jessica blinked at me, her brow furrowed in confusion. Where are you going?" "I was going to order an espresso martini." "Home," I said, my voice flat and devoid of any emotion. Then I turned and walked away. The cool night air hit like a splash of water, waking me from a 2.5-year slumber. Each step I took away from that glass-fronted, performative restaurant felt like a step toward clarity. I was shedding a weight I hadn't even fully realized I'd been carrying. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already buzzing. It was Jessica. I ignored it. A text message appeared. "Jessica, seriously? You just walked out?" That was so embarrassing. Another one followed a minute later. "Jessica, Jacob, it was a joke. You're being so dramatic. Stop acting like a child." I didn't reply. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove home in blessed, empowering silence. An hour later, there was a sharp, insistent knock on my apartment door. I knew it was her. I opened it to find Jessica standing there, arms crossed over her expensive dress, her face a mask of indignation, as if she were the one who had been wronged. "Really?" she began, pushing past me into the living room without an invitation. "You're just going to storm out like that and humiliate me in front of my friends?" I closed the door slowly and turned to face her, my own sense of calm feeling like a superpower. "Embarrass you? Jessica, you call me leftovers. In public. To their faces." She rolled her eyes with practiced exasperation. "Oh my God, it was a joke. We were all laughing. You just can't take a joke." "No," I corrected her, my voice steady. "They weren't laughing. They were uncomfortable. Because in one sentence, you exposed exactly how you see me, and it made everyone in on your little secret." Her expression hardened. "So what? You're going to throw away 2.5 years because I made one stupid comment after a couple of drinks? Grow up, Jake." A small, tired laugh escaped me. It wasn't born of amusement, but of utter exhaustion. Nobody accidentally calls the person they love leftovers. Drunk words are sober thoughts, Jess. You were trying to sound clever for your friends, and in the process, you told the absolute truth. You meant it. She faltered for a second, caught off guard by my refusal to engage in a shouting match. You're twisting this. You always do this. You blow things way out of proportion. No, I said, shaking my head. For the first time, I think I'm seeing things in perfect proportion. I let you belittle my car, my clothes, my desire to save for our future instead of blowing it on weekends. I always made excuses for you. But this time, I believe you. You see me as second best, as the convenient option, as the safe bet. And I am done being convenient. Her eyes widened, the reality of the situation finally dawning on her. This wasn't just another argument we'd smooth over by morning. Wait, you're actually serious? You'd end us over this? I met her gaze without flinching. You ended us the moment those words left your mouth. I'm just acknowledging it. For once, she was speechless. She just stood there, her mouth slightly agape, as if she couldn't compute a scenario where I wasn't begging her to reconsider. I walked to the door and opened it, gesturing into the hallway. Good night, Jessica. She hesitated, her anger flaring up to replace her shock. Fine, she spat. Whatever. You'll regret this. And with that, she was gone. The silence that filled my apartment was heavier than I'd anticipated. But beneath the weight of it, there was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Relief. The first week was defined by an unnerving quiet. For over 2 years, my phone had been a constant source of notifications, her texts about a difficult client, memes she found funny, her endless stream of consciousness venting. Suddenly, it was silent for hours at a time. The phantom buzz in my pocket was the ghost of our relationship. I filled the silence with my own life. I started going to the gym after work every day, something I'd often skipped because Jessica preferred I come straight home to have dinner with her. I reconnected with coworkers for happy hour, realizing I hadn't seen most of them outside the office in months. I even dusted off my old PlayStation and spent a Saturday reconnecting with a college buddy over a few rounds of online gaming. With each passing day, I started to see just how much of my social life, my hobbies, and my personal time I had quietly sacrificed to be at her beck and call. Of course, Jessica didn't waste any time wallowing. Barely 2 weeks after our breakup, a mutual acquaintance sent me a screenshot from her Instagram story. It was a picture of 2 clinking champagne flutes, a man's watch visible on the wrist opposite hers. The caption was a thinly veiled jab. Finally an entree, not an appetizer. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set my phone down. No anger, no jealousy, just cold confirmation. She had meant every single word. I was the leftovers, and this new guy, he was her prime rib. Or so she thought. Over the next month, the story of Jessica and her entree trickled back to me through the grapevine. His name was Chad, a classic finance bro who drove a leased BMW and had a penchant for posting his stock market wins online. Jessica was flaunting him everywhere, plastering their dates at exclusive clubs and weekend trips to wineries all over social media. She was bragging to everyone about how spontaneous he was, how he challenged her and made her feel alive. It stung, but only for a moment. Then, the narrative began to shift. Apparently, Mr. Spontaneity was also spontaneously disrespectful. Friends mentioned he would cancel their plans at the last minute, leave her waiting alone at bars, and flirt shamelessly with other women right in front of her. The girl who had once called me predictable was now living in a constant state of anxiety, never knowing if her boyfriend would show up or if he was out with someone else. Karma showed up faster than I expected. Meanwhile, my own life was settling into a rhythm of profound peace. I was cooking more, lifting heavier weights, and sleeping through the night for the first time in years. My focus at work sharpened, and my boss commended me on my renewed productivity. A coworker even commented, "Man, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look 10 years younger." I never badmouthed Jessica. When people asked, I simply said we had gone our separate ways. No drama, no bitterness, just distance. Then, one Thursday night, about 6 weeks after I walked out of that restaurant, my phone lit up with a message from a number I knew all too well. "Jessica, hey, can we talk?" I stared at the text, the simple words carrying the weight of everything that had happened. I knew this was only the beginning. I read the message, locked my phone, and went back to the book I was reading. A day later, another text arrived. "Jessica, wow, you're really just going to ignore me? After everything?" Still, I said nothing. 3 more days passed. Then her strategy changed. Jessica, okay, I get it. I messed up. That leftovers comment was stupid. I was tipsy and trying to be edgy for my friends. You know I didn't mean it like that. I actually let out a small laugh. She was trying to rebrand her cruelty as a failed comedy bit. That evening, my phone rang. Against my better judgment, I answered it, but I didn't speak. Finally, she said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in months. You're an impossible person to get a hold of. Maybe that's the point, I replied coolly. She sighed, a sound heavy with theatrical frustration. Come on, Jake, don't be like that. Look, I know I hurt you. But are you really going to erase 2.5 years together over one dumb comment? You didn't just hurt me, Jessica. You showed me my exact value to you. There's a difference. It was a bad joke, she insisted, her tone sharpening. I was drunk, and you're blowing this completely out of proportion. No, I said calmly. I'm seeing it clearly. I believed you that night because, deep down, it aligned with all the little things you'd been saying and doing for months. That's why I walked away. There was a pause on the other end. She switched tactics again, her voice becoming plaintive. I miss us. You were always there for me, no matter what. No one else has ever treated me the way you did. Can't we just start over? I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. No, Jessica. I'm not interested in being the leftovers you come back to after the main course disappoints you. Wow, she snapped, the sweetness gone in an instant. So that's it. You're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away, I told her, my voice firm. I'm finally keeping something for myself, my self-respect. I ended the call before she could respond and blocked her number. A week later, on a Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was. She looked nothing like the confident, glamorous woman from the restaurant. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her makeup was smudged as if she'd been crying, and she was clutching her phone like a lifeline. Can we please just talk? She asked, her voice cracking. I hesitated, then stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch, wringing her hands. For a moment, she just stared at the floor. Then the tears came, silent at first, then turning into quiet sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry. I never should have said that. You were the only person who ever truly, genuinely cared about me. I remained standing across the room. Crying doesn't change what you said, Jess. Or more importantly, what you meant. She wiped at her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. You don't understand. Chad, the guy I was seeing. He didn't care about me at all. It was all for show. He was cruel, and he cheated on me. I let the silence hang in the air, refusing to fill it with condolences. I wasn't going to be her emotional support animal after she'd put me down. She looked up at me, clearly expecting me to rush over and comfort her. When I didn't, I finally said, and you think his failure is a reason for me to take you back? Her head snapped up. No, I'm saying I made a huge mistake. You're stable, you're kind. You're the only one who. I cut her off. Stop. You don't miss me. You miss what I provided. You miss the stability. You miss the unwavering support. You miss the safety net that let you act recklessly without consequences. That's not true, she pleaded, but her eyes betrayed her. It is, I said, my voice hardening with conviction. You call me leftovers. The second you thought you had a steak dinner lined up with Chad, you tossed me aside without a second thought and even mocked me for it on social media. Now that your 5-star meal turned out to be poison, you want to come back and see if the leftovers are still in the fridge. That's not love, Jessica. That's convenience. Her face twisted, desperation morphing into a familiar anger. You think you're so much better than me now, don't you? You'll never find someone who put up with you the way I did. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. You didn't put up with me, Jessica. I carried you, and my arms are tired. She shot up from the couch, her tears completely gone, replaced by pure fury. Fine. Screw you, Jacob. You're going to regret this. Don't come crawling back to me when you realize how lonely you are. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. Goodbye, Jessica. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. But all I felt was a profound, unshakable calm. The storm had finally passed. The true test came about a month later. An old mutual friend, Mike, was hosting a backyard barbecue. I almost declined when I heard Jessica might be there, but then I stopped myself. I wasn't going to let her presence dictate my life anymore. When I walked through the side gate, I felt her eyes on me immediately. She was trying to play it cool, laughing a little too loudly in a circle of people, but her gaze kept darting my way. Eventually, she cornered me near the drink cooler. "Hey," she said softly, as if we were old friends who had simply drifted apart. "You look really good." "Thanks," I replied politely, reaching past her for a bottle of water. She fidgeted with the charm on her necklace. "I've been thinking a lot about us. I know I screwed everything up, royally. But what we had was real. Maybe we could, I don't know, try again? Start fresh?" I turned to face her fully, looking her directly in the eye. She was waiting for me to soften, to see the old Jessica she thought was still in there. Instead, I kept my voice low but clear enough for the people nearby to hear. "You made yourself perfectly clear that night, Jessica. I was leftovers to you, remember?" Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, to offer another excuse, but I continued. "You left me for what you thought was a better meal. Tell me, Jess, if I was leftovers then, what does that make you now?" The chatter around us died down. A few people were openly watching the exchange. Jessica's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. "That's not fair," she whispered, her bravado completely shattered. "No," I said, my voice steady and final. "What wasn't fair was me pouring everything I had into a relationship with someone who saw me as disposable. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your consolation prize." I took a step back, creating a definitive space between us. "I was never leftovers, Jessica, and I'm not your second choice." I turned away from her, leaving her standing alone by the cooler, and walked over to join a group of my friends who were laughing about something by the grill. The conversation seamlessly picked up around me, absorbing me back into my life. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her slip out the gate, alone. No victory lap, no revenge high, just the quiet, powerful certainty of my own worth. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free, and that felt better than any five-star meal ever could. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel.